Hey guys, welcome back to the Life Mastery Podcast. I'm Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc, here with Dr. Kori Propst, a health psychologist, my partner in crime. And we're going to continue a talk that we started in our last episode in the fitness entrepreneurship category. I brought up the topic of self-direction and now bleeding that over into motivational mastery for a little bit more of a personal goal pursuit motif. Kori is going to take over. We're going to keep talking about self-direction.
Yeah, Joe, you brought up that topic yesterday and my brain went bing! And I started thinking about, I don't know if some of our listeners are probably familiar with Gretchen Rubin, who has done a lot of research on happiness and habit change. And that's where my mind went. I was thinking about her 4 tendencies is what she's called them. And the 4 tendencies are how we respond to rules and expectations. And I think that a lot of what she talks about and how she's categorized people. We like to put people in boxes. We like to put ourselves in boxes to understand ourselves better. Really relates a lot to whether we're going to be self-directed or not. I feel like these 4 tendencies really influence how self-direction plays out in our lives. But, I was, just to tell a quick story, I was riding this weekend with my cycling club. And this kept happening over and over again where the light would turn red and some of us would stop and some of us wouldn't. And I'm like, what is going on here? The rule is, as a cyclist, you're like traffic, right? So if the light turns red, you stop. Well, some people would stop. And then if there was no traffic around, then they'd go through the red light. And other people would stop and wait for the light to turn green. And I'm like, why is everyone reacting so differently to this? And what is it internally that tells them that they can even do that? They can break the rules. So again, I'm starting to categorize people, and they fall really nicely into these 4 tendencies that Gretchen Rubin talks about. So I want to kind of go over the 4. That's okay. So she talks about how we have, and I'm a big acronym fan, as everyone knows. And so I was trying to find a way to, how am I going to remember these? Because she didn't create an acronym, but I did. And it's CORE, which is kind of easy to remember because my name is Kori. So, but it's QUOR. She talks about questioners. Okay. So these are people who, they accept the rules, but only if they make sense. So they question things. They're like, why would I do that? How does that make any sense? And if it doesn't make any sense, then they're probably not going to follow the rule. Okay, whether it's an inner or outer expectation that's put on them. Then you have the U's, and those are the upholders. These are the people that accept all the rules. Okay, these are the people who meet the deadlines. Then you have obligers, and these people accept outside rules and expectations, but they don't like to adopt self-imposed rules. So I'm thinking, so what if a person is an obliger, Joe? Are they ever necessarily going to have a high level of self-direction? Or if they recognize this about themselves, they have this tendency of being an obliger, following outside rules, but not necessarily doing so well when they set internal rules and expectations. If they recognize this, maybe these are the people, like we talked about, who need that connection with other people, need an accountability partner. That person who's kind of looking over their shoulder saying, did you do this? These are the people who are going to probably really thrive with a personal trainer, but aren't going to be able to get to the gym on their own. right?
Mm-hmm. And is her supposition there that it really is more of an internal motivation out of kind of discipline?
Yeah, yeah. What she talks about is, I mean, so none of us fit perfectly into a box. Like, no psychological theory is 100%, right? Because what I recognize about myself is I'm an upholder. If I have an internal expectation, I'm going to meet it. If there's an external expectation, it's a deadline, it's a traffic sign, I'm usually 99% of the time probably going to do it. But there's a rebel. That's the one we didn't mention yet. I have rebel tendencies within me. And these are the people who reject rules completely. And if there's a self-imposed rule or an outer rule, a law, a traffic sign, someone tells them to do something, they're the people who want to do exactly the opposite. Okay? And I have that, you've seen it. I have that tendency within me, like, don't push me. Like, there's a will inside of me that, you know what, if it's not, no. I will decide how this is going to go down.
I'm interested to hear what you think I am, what category you put me in.
I thought about this as I was thinking through what we were going to talk about today. Okay, so we've got questioners, we've got upholders, we've got obligers, and we've got rebels. You have a very strong internal drive to stick to expectations. The outer expectations, I don't know if I'd call you a rebel, but caveat, I've known you for a fairly long time, and I've seen you kind of migrate into new tendencies. And I think this happens with a lot of things, just like the character strengths, where I may not have a stronger strength of curiosity, but with practice and, being more deliberate about it, it increases. You have become more of a questioner than I think you were earlier in your life. I would say that you were an obliger, and now you're more of a questioner.
So I would put myself, like you, firmly in the upholder group, but yes, with those questioning tendencies. Because number one, I do love rules. I do love social structure. As a social psych, anthropology student, writer, and all of that, I'm even in my parenting, I teach that, these are rules that we follow, because then we have the expectation that everybody can do that, and then life works. So I'm very much in that camp, but absolutely questioning things. I mean, using that filter as a basis to then say, well, maybe we do need to change these rules somehow. But yeah, this is.
Say that's shifted for you just within like the last 5 or 6 years, especially.
In some areas, certainly applying it in some areas, but yeah, you could definitely go through different phases of people's lives developmentally and see those changes, but definitely.
So I think it would be interesting for people, especially because you mentioned the word different areas, contextually, we may be one more than another. So for fitness entrepreneurs out there, maybe look at these tendencies and ask yourself, what camp do I tend to fall in as it relates to inner expectations and outer expectations? Do I kind of push back against deadlines and what other people are telling me might be good for me? Do I tend to question things and ponder them and ask if other ways might be more appropriate or better or more effective? Or do I just follow the rules? Do I fare really well when I have a template to follow? And I can say that for me, it depends. It depends on the situation and what I'm working toward. I need a template sometimes. I want a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. almost a how-to manual. And in other things, I just need you to leave me alone. And don't give me a deadline, because that's what's going to keep me moving forward. Like I do really well with that. But if you create too many boundaries around how I'm going to do it, that's where my rebel tendencies come out. And I'm like, no, that's not the best way. Maybe for you.
So would you say, under the guise of personal development, this is one of those areas where it's best, first of all, just to understand where you fall in these, and then there's not one particular category that is best, but you need to know how to integrate them. How would you describe the goal of this kind of information?
So I think, like with anything, Joe, self-awareness comes first. If we're wanting to change something about ourselves, develop a new habit, shift a behavior, we have to understand how we are now first. Self-awareness, number one. And there's so many different kind of ways that we can do that, like these 4 tendencies, the big 5 personality traits, the 24 character strengths, like which ones of those are in our top 7 that we use most of the time without even thinking about it. So I would recommend that maybe you take a look at 3 different ways to begin understanding yourself better, and then begin asking, like, where do I really thrive, and in what sorts of situations, and when do I feel like I'm like contracting and constricting, and when do I feel really expansive and energized? Because I think how our bodies respond is it's a good tool. And again, that comes down to self-awareness. It's a good tool to understand in what sorts of situations and contexts we're feeling like we can move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in terms of self-direction, somebody who's questioning, but then they will ultimately, follow the rules, the good rules. Mm-hmm. They're gonna discern that. The obliger, I would say, not that you should just be a wallflower and just do everything you're told, but there is some value to just being able to be in agreement and get along with people and defer to group consensus and not just always be that rebel. The rebel would be the opposite of that. Somebody who's just going to say, screw you no matter what. Mm-hmm. But then that person who, as you said, is just not quite self-directed enough, they're going to follow the rules, but they just don't have that internal rule following system, so to speak. So it seems like that's the person in this little mini series we've now created that needs to say, how do I best now accomplish those intrinsically motivated things that I'm just not good at?
Well, you see, like in the business world, you see a lot of people who join masterminds. Why? Because they recognize that they need that outer accountability. They may have some self-direction, but it's not quite enough to break through that ceiling that they have, or the belief that they can only get to this point. So you see things like that. You see on the health and fitness side of things, people who take what their doctors say like the word, and they are going to follow everything their doctor said. They're going to take all their medications. They are not going to question it because this person knows what they're talking about. And then, the majority of people who don't do that, but also they don't have that they're not questioning anything either. They're just not going to do it. And then the people, and I have a lot of clients like this who say, I just can't do it on my own. I need to be checking in with you. And they're the ones too who they probably have, the personal trainer, not the online one, because that won't work. They need to have someone like telling them what to do face to face.
Mm-hmm.
If they like, it's funny because over the years I've been like, because I am very self-directed, my goal before, I'm thinking I need to get this person to the point where they're going to be self-sufficient. Like, wouldn't that be awesome for them, where they don't have to pay a trainer anymore and they've learned everything and they can design their own workouts. And, you know, they wake up in the morning, they're like, I can't wait to go to the gym all by themselves. Why? Because that works for me. It doesn't work for them. And so I have a different take on it now.
You know, I was going to say the exact same thing. I was going to actually say this is a great wrap-up point, because I have thought of the exact same thing, probably more so in the last year than ever, for the same reason. I view that self-sufficiency and that self-motivation as the ultimate goal. Some people are not equipped for that personality-wise, and because that's that constant pull of the human experience, our individual goals and needs, our social and collective goals and needs, that's okay. It's just that we need to recognize that and not necessarily push those people. And if you're somebody who says, you know, that is just not me. I love to thrive with people together. I don't necessarily want to be on my own. This is great information. I think we should you know, include some more information like this in other topics.
You bet. Yeah, there's an acceptance piece that goes like, it's okay, I'm not broken because I recognize about myself that I thrive better with a personal trainer. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. That's awesome. You recognize that. Okay. So let's capitalize on those things and view it in a positive light, as opposed to, I have to change this about myself.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Kori. And for you guys watching and listening, thank you. We're gonna thread this into some other topics, I can tell, because I know doing life together and not being ashamed that you do life better together. Mm-hmm. You know, there's nothing bad about that. So appreciate you guys liking, sharing all that stuff with our content, so we can keep doing more of it. And we're gonna catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.